Claire Hiett here again. This week's recommended read is The Dragon in the Library. It was written by Louis Stowell and it was illustrated by David O'Toole, and the names are on the front cover there. My creative response to this lovely story is that I'm going to show you how to make a three-dimensional dragon out of card. We're not going to stop there. We're also going to place it in a scene. So we're going to make a scene out of card and a dragon as well. Things you're going to need for this task. You might want to refer to some of the illustrations in the book. There's some pictures of dragons and spells and magic hats and things like that. That might help you design your set. You're going to want a pencil. You're going to want a Sharpie or a permanent marker or felt pen. You might want some masking tape. It might come in handy to help some of the joints and make them a little bit stronger. You'll need a scissors. I bought this white card from the range. It's a nice thick card, and you're going to need something that's going to be thick enough to be able to stand up on its own, because we are making these three-dimensional characters. This says 300 GSM, and what that means is the weight of the card. It's a nice heavy thickish one, not too thick so that it's difficult to cut, but thick enough to stand on its own. And as I say, I bought that in the range. Then you're going to want some coloured pencils or crayons or paint, something basically to decorate and add a bit of colour to your scene and your dragon. And that's it, so we'll get started. First thing we're going to do is make our background shapes, get them cut out. We're not going to stick anything together, because if we stick it together too soon, it's going to be difficult to decorate. So we just want to make the shapes first of all. You're going to need 3 pieces of card. I've got 3 pieces here. One is going to be the floor that your dragon stands on. The other one is going to be the back of the room that you're putting your dragon into, so you've got like an L shape. And then the third piece then would be for any extra little bits that you need to secure and make sure that it stands. I've made one out of paper just to show you what I mean, and that stands up okay, even though it's just made out of flimsy photocopy paper, because I've cut these triangles and I've stuck them into the side. So as you can see, I've got a floor, I've got a wall, and then these 2 triangles here make sure that that wall stands up, so we can put a 3-dimensional dragon into that. So we'll get the background cut and all the shapes cut out to size first. But as I said, don't stick them together until you've drawn on them. Otherwise it's going to be very difficult to draw and colour on them, especially once you've stuck these triangles onto them. So with the 2 pieces of card that's going to be the floor and the back, I've taken a ruler and I've just measured the width of the ruler and drawn a line on one side of landscape, not portrait orientation. So landscape, so the long way, measure the ruler, one width, and draw a line down there. What you can then do with that is you fold it along that line, and that little flap there will then stick onto the bottom of your floor. And that's how you need to join the 2 pieces together. So next we'll do the triangles that will hold that wall up and stop it from falling down. Starting from one of the corners, I've drawn in towards the middle and I've made a triangle. I'm going to cut that out, and then I'm going to draw around that shape to cut another one, so that I've got 2 identical triangles. You've got to make sure that they're the same size, otherwise it might make your background a little bit less stable. Okay, so we'll get 2 of those. So I've cut the one triangle out, and then if I lay it on top by that line there, it's one less line to cut. I'll just draw down there, and I'll draw down there. And then if I cut that one out as well, then those 2 are exactly the same size. Well, pretty much anyway. So I've got my 2 triangles. Now I want to put a fold across the bottom. So I'll draw a line there. And then I want to put a fold across the back as well to be able to attach it to the floor and the wall. So I'll draw a line across there. And then I'll do the same on the other one. Try to keep it the same size if you want to measure it. And a line across the back. And then that one gets folded, keeping the ruler in place so that it goes right up to the line, because it's quite thick card. And then we fold that one as well. And then you fold these lines too, and then what you've got is a triangle. Let me just do this one to show you. Make sure you've got a nice flat crease. It's worth cutting that little bit at the bottom there. Just that little square in the corner you'll need to get rid of. So it looks like that. And then you've got a triangle. When you stand it up, you've got this bit here that glues to the bottom, to your floor, and this bit here that glues to your back. And if you do the same on the other side, then that should hold it nice and secure when we glue it all together. But as I say, we'll glue it all together once we've drawn on it. So just to summarise for the background, you will have two pieces of card, one with a fold on the edge like that, two identical triangles with the edges folded up like that. So we'll set those to one side now, and we'll come back and do the drawing and the decorating, but next we're going to make our dragon. To make the dragon, I've got a fresh piece of card, but I've also kept handy the one that I cut the triangles out of, because that will be really useful for smaller parts, especially if you can't fit it all onto the one sheet of card. You're going to need these scrap bits, so don't throw them away. In terms of inspiration for the dragon, in the book it mentions a dogon as well, which is a hybrid between a dog and a dragon. A real cute character in the book, and there's an illustration of that on page 44. So you could take some inspiration from that drawing. There's also an illustration of a dragon on page 125. So that's another nice drawing. You know, you might want to take the wings off that one and a tail off another one, and make a new one of your own creation. This is quite nice here on page 126, where you've got a close-up of the eyes and some of the decoration, like the dots and things on the dragon. So, you know, you could take inspiration from the illustrations in this book. You could make your own. You could make a hybrid by taking parts of one and parts of another, like they did with the character Dogon. So have a look for some inspiration, get some pictures to copy maybe, and a colour scheme to think about before we start drawing our dragons. I've decided to go with a Dogon because he's a really cute character in the book, and I love dogs too. So mine's a hybrid dog crossed with a dragon. So I've drawn my character onto a piece of card, and as you can see, I've almost filled the card with it. So, you know, try and do a big one so that it's a big sort of, it's not necessarily a scary dragon, but so that it fills the room, the scene that you make. Another thing I need to draw your attention to is the fact that I haven't given it any legs. And the reason being is we need to make the legs separately. Now these may look a bit weird at the moment, but they will glue onto the floor of our scene, and they will then slide, we'll cut slits in them, and they slide into the body of our dragon or dogon. So what you need to do is take the end of a piece of card and fold it over, so you make sure you've got a line down the side like that. Draw your legs. These are the back legs, so they're slightly smaller, and these are going to be the front legs. And you've got to make sure that you leave a little flap that folds over, just like you did with your triangles. So that bit folds and sticks to the floor so that it stands upright. And then we'll cut these shapes out, but when you cut, make sure not to cut across that bit there. So then you'll have two-sided legs. I'll cut them out now and show you what I mean. So I've cut both pairs of legs out, and as you can see, they're joined together at the top. So it's important, make sure you don't cut that bit. Having a double leg like that is going to make it more stable and enable it to stand up. And then where we've got the lines across the bottom here, they're going to need to be folded over. But what you're going to need to make sure of is that they go in opposite directions. So you do one forwards like that, and then turn it over and do that side the opposite direction. And then what you've got on the bottom of your legs looks like feet. And these are the bits that get glued to the floor so that it stands up on its own like that. So you need to do that to both pairs of legs. And then the next thing then, I'm going to cut my dragon out of the card. So I've got all the components ready that I need, all cut out of the card. I've added a little bit of something different to the legs by just sort of snipping into the sides like that in a bit of a zigzag, and that makes it look like it's got hairy legs. And then mine is a dog crossed with the dragon after all. So I've done that on both sets of legs. Then I cut the dragon out of the cardboard. If I flip it over, you can see that I've drawn detail on both sides. Because it's a freestanding model, you might be able to see a bit of the back depending on which way round you put it. So you might want to think about drawing or just colouring in the back of your character as well. Then we've got the floor, the triangles and the wall. So there's two pieces of card there. One with the fold in it and your triangles to assemble those. Before we start assembling though, we need to decorate them. So I've referred back to the book and looking at some of the illustrations, I think on the wall of my set I'm going to draw some library shelves like that there on page 38-39. You could also maybe look at decorating it with trees, or you could do some library books and then a path leading into trees as is described in the pages of the book when they're moving from the library to another place. You could do something like all these magical sort of patterns, stars and moons and swirls and fire and water, all the elements. Witches' hats, wizards' hats, cauldrons, you know, you could decorate it with things like that, or you could use decoration like that on your carpet, for example, and then do library books on the wall. It's up to you to decide, and you need to think about what colours you want your dragon or dog on to be as well. So that's what we're going to move on to next, is colouring it all in. I've drawn some things onto what's going to be the carpet or the floor of my set, and I've taken inspiration from pages 51 and 61, and I've just sort of looked at the elements. So we've got water, fire, some swirls, some moons, some stars, a bit of nature there, reference to nature, a test tube, a wizard's hat and some lightning bolts. I've put a couple of moons on there as well, and then there's like a big wave coming in at the bottom. So next thing, I need to colour this in now. I'm using these pens that are called Cure Colour, and they're specifically for graphic designers. Illustrators use them as well. They're double-ended, and you've got one nib that's a bit thicker and the other nib that's thinner for doing some fine detail. But when you colour in with these, you get a nice flat colour, unlike with some of the other felt pens which leave lines across your paper. And that's why a lot of artists use these, is for that flatness of colour, especially if they're going to need to get their work photographed, you know, for posters and books and things like that. That flatness is really important. So these are quite nice pens for anybody that is interested maybe in becoming a graphic designer or an illustrator. They're a good set to have. So I'm going to continue now and get this coloured in. I'm also going to use a Sharpie, a black Sharpie, to add an outline. Oh, I'll find one that works a bit better than that, but I'm going to black outline everything so that it stands out as well. So I'll show you this when I've done a little bit more. I'm quite happy with my carpet, my library carpet. I'm probably going to leave it like that for now. I might put a bit of colour in the background. I don't know, I might not. I'll see if I can find a lighter blue. But I might leave it like that because there's quite a lot going on and you don't want it to be too many clashing colours and patterns and things. Because don't forget, we've got a creature to sit on top of that, and there's a wall in the background as well. Talking of the creature, that is my next job. I'm going to colour in my dog on. So I've coloured in my dog on. I've gone for red and green Welsh colours. We haven't long had St David's Day, so I used that. I've also got a golden Labrador, so I was inspired by him. He's got a pink nose, pink freckly nose, and I've given some blonde hair as well. Then I've done the 2 pairs of legs, and I've sort of put little flicks to make them look like hairy legs. Flip them over, you can see I've done both sides, as I mentioned earlier. So when you stand him up, you can sort of move him around and look at it from different angles. So the next thing we need to do now is the wall that's going to go at the back, and then finally we'll be able to assemble it all. So we'll do the wall first. If you've got a cutting mat, it'll help you get lines and things like that straight. So I'm just going to put shelves in on this so that I can then put some books on, so it's like a library wall, and I'm taking inspiration from the actual book cover. So if you look at this, there are shelves and books. You know, you could even copy that if you wanted to. Copy the cover. You could have a dragon's tail flicking into the corner. There's more on the back as well, and there are more inside. So I'm taking inspiration from that to do shelves on my wall. And as I say, if you've got something like a cutting mat, it'll help you, and a longer ruler, it'll help you get things straight. So I'm going to grid this, draw some books in, and colour it in, and I'll show you development as I go. So I've drawn a grid of shelves on the wall. See the bit that we'd folded over, the flap? I haven't actually bothered drawing on that because that's going to be stuck underneath the other piece, so you won't see that. So, you know, don't waste your colours or anything on that bit. Next thing I need to do now is draw some books on the shelves. And as I said, you know, you can copy from this if you want. There's quite a nice sort of book there with stripes on it. So you just put the book spines in. You can have a little gap in between them. You could draw patterns on them. You could write some words. You could put the titles of some of the books that you've read onto them. There's all sorts of things you can do. And see how some of them are lying flat on the shelf as well. You could do a row of them like that as well. So we get those drawn up, and then I'm going to outline them with the black as well so that they stand out before we add some colour. Progress so far on my library wall. I've done the middle row almost. Put a few cobwebs up because I know there wouldn't be any cobwebs in Neath Talbot libraries at all, but this is a wizarding library after all, in a book. I think probably what I'll do now on some of these bits is think about tools that wizards and witches might use. I might pop a cauldron in, I might put some test tubes in, I'll probably do a few more cobwebs. You know, it doesn't have to be completely filled with books. If you look at this one, you've got bookends, you've got a statue, there's a bottle there, there's a chest there, look, spells chest maybe, who knows, some more cobwebs. So, you know, lots of different options to continue with. And there it is, that's my back wall finished, my library shelves. I haven't actually decorated the triangles that go either side yet, because I'm going to wait and see when I assemble it where they actually sit. And then what I'll probably do then is I can join them up with whichever colour is by the side of them to make it look a little bit more effective. So next thing now, we need to gather everything back together and join all our bits and pieces. So I think the first thing will be to stick the floor to the wall. So I'm going to grab a glue stick and then just run the glue down this bit that we folded at the beginning and the bit that we haven't painted on. Plenty of glue so that it holds. Always roll the glue back down, otherwise it gets stuck in the lid. And then we take our carpet and our back and we stick those two bits together. And then when you stand that up, you can see you've got a wall and a floor. So this is where the triangles now need to get slotted in to the sides to make sure that the back stands up straight. So I'll show you that next. Right, I've stood the back up against a roll of tissue just to show you what I'm going to do with the triangles. So if you remember with the triangles, we cut a little bit there, didn't we? And then we had a little fold. So where that fold needs to go is underneath the carpet and a bit underneath the back. And then we do exactly the same then on the other side. That goes in there. And then once we've glued that, that'll stabilise the back and the floor so that it can stand on its own. Now, do you see what I mean about waiting till it's assembled to see what colour I need to do the sides? So I think it's safe enough to say that, you know, I could maybe leave that one because the floor is the same colour, or I've got the choice to paint it grey, the same colour as the wall. You know, I'll let you decide what you're going to do with that, or you can just leave it because there's plenty going on anyway. So we'll glue those bits next. Now I decided to colour mine the same colour as the wall so that it pushes it into the background a little bit more. It was standing out a bit too much with the white. So to glue this, these little flaps that you folded over earlier, I'm going to put a piece of scrap paper down because they're quite narrow, and if I glue it on top of all my lovely work, I'll get a bit upset because I'll make a mess of it. So a bit of scrap paper underneath just to get the glue that you don't want to make a mess with. Glue down both of those. Put the lid back on that. Get rid of the scrap. Fold those back in. And then slide one underneath and make sure that's stuck down. And then you slide that other one behind the wall and make sure that's stuck down. And that's your background assembled. Just give that a little push to stick on. Let that dry. It will dry and stick down. I just need to put a little bit of pressure onto it. So once that's stuck, we'll put the legs onto our dragon or dog on, and then we'll put it all together. To add the legs onto our creature to make sure they stand, you're going to need to do a little snip down that part there, but don't go all the way, otherwise you're going to cut the legs in half. So you've got that little bit there, and then you need to put a little snip in your character's chest as well. And then what happens is those two will slot together, and then once you splay the feet out on the bits that we folded, that will stand up. And then because of the tail of mine, it stands up okay with one pair of legs. So, you know, that's another decision you can make. You could just have the one if you wanted to. I want two. I put that little snip a little bit too far back, so I'm going to put another one a bit further forward. Do it on a bit of an angle. And then I've cut that leg, the back leg there, the same. Slot those two together. Fold the feet out. And then they will stand once we've stuck the feet down, see those legs have spun around. Once we've stuck the feet down, that'll stand nicely. I'll turn the camera around now so you can see it from a different angle. And there he is, my dog on. I've glued the feet to the bottom. I've made a set for him. Got a carpet, colourful wizard carpet to stand on. And there's the back wall. And looking at him from above. Just turn that around. You can see there how the triangles are helping to stabilise. And that's it. I hope you've really enjoyed the session responding to the Dragon in the Library, which was written by Louis Stowell and illustrated by David O2. We'd love to see any work that you produce based off this workshop, so do email images of your work to lhayes@npt.gov.uk, and there are my social media handles as well if you want to have a look, if you're interested in having a look at some of the other things that I do. Hope you enjoy. Diolch yn fawr. Hwyl.